Okay, I'm gonna record on Zoom as well.
Recording in progress.
They started having a little lady announce it so that people don't like get surprised
Don't get
when
so offended.
yeah,
Like,
when you're recording.
yeah, that's smart.
Well, how are you, Ricky?
I'm well, man. I just realized we've kind of been in touch on and off for like 2 years, and we actually never spoke.
I know,
Kind
and
of crazy,
what's
right?
crazy, and I'd love to get into this, but what's crazy is both of us have been robbed in the last 2 years as well.
Yours happened before you went
Yeah,
home, and before you went to.
it was right before COVID hit. It was like in March.
You were
It was
still at
right.
Kinoteca.
Yep, I was still doing Kinotika stuff. We were living in Laguna Niguel, and I was selling an Inspire 2 drone on OfferUp, and these people just swiped it from me. But because of that, they like I literally had to chase after them, and they had a getaway car and everything. It was like it was
What?
insane. Um, like I packed it all up in the box, and then they were like, "Yeah, let's, we got the cash," and I was like, "Cool."
Mm-hmm.
And then they just held the box and just ran really fast, and they were way faster than me.
That's
But
crazy.
then because of that, they knew where I lived, and they essentially stalked me. And 2 weeks later, they saw where, I lived, and waited for me and my wife and kids to leave. And they found out that I was a YouTuber, and they just broke in and stole everything, all my cameras and stuff.
Oh man,
So it's just,
that's
it's
terrible.
crazy, man.
That's terrible.
And then you about a year ago, right? You had
Yeah, let's see. When
robbery
did
as
we
well.
know? It's about about this time, almost exactly a year ago, I think. I had just moved into a new studio, and I don't know if they knew I was a YouTuber or not, but I was there for like 2 months, and then I came in one day, and box. It was like kind of like a bomb went off in my studio. Like things were just everywhere. I was like, this is not right. Something. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't leave it this messy the day before. Then I kind of walked around and I had just bought two red Komodos. I'm like,
Oh,
and they were just sitting on my my new tripod, and like one was sitting at the overhead spot. I'm like, why are they empty?
oh my
It's like
goodness.
it's one of those things that it just doesn't
Yeah,
like register, right? And so yeah, I was like,
100%.
oh, okay, I think I just got robbed. So I walked around some more, and there was just like stuff missing everywhere. Like all my gear was missing. I had like six or seven like L series and Sony GM lenses that were gone, and then the two Komodo bodies.
Yeah, those brand new
Um,
cameras. You were ready to start using them.
yeah. I had just like I think I've just done like a couple like video shoots just to test them out, and then like a bunch of my swords were missing, a bunch of my knives were missing. I'm like, oh, this stinks. So anyway,
Goodness.
called the cops, and it took me like a month to do inventory and to figure everything else that was missing, but. I
Did you
was
happen to have any security or
Yeah, so
insurance?
I was made mostly whole financially.
That's good.
Yeah, American Express kind of was I so I knew I had basically 3 months from the time I moved into the studio to get insurance for the building, just because I know MX has a 90-day kind of a loss left policy on the MX Platinum card. So basically use that, and I had renter's
Cool.
insurance that reimburses me as well. So I mean, all in all, I was made maybe 80% whole. There were swords that I bought in Japan that couldn't be
Mm.
reimbursed. There was a few other things that I've purchased a long time ago that couldn't be reimbursed.
Those are just like, yeah, they're
Y-
items that you can't.
Yeah,
they're
you
one of
can't
a
replace
kind.
them necessarily. And even if like you try to claim the insurance, they're like, well, it has nothing to do with your business. Like even though it did, or so all in
Yeah,
all, I mean, I think ultimately it was like a $25,000 heist, and
yeah. That's grand
Uh,
theft,
yeah.
technically.
Then I was reimbursed like 19, just under 20,000.
Yeah, I
So
mean that's.
it's life. I mean,
I
those
know,
things
but
happen.
it's just I can empathize with you. I don't know what you went through emotionally through that, but um, you know, at first it was such a shock. I just kind of started trying to figure out how to solve the problem and work with the cops and everything. But it was a couple like probably 3 months later, I kind of like had a weird breakdown, and like I remember just kind of like laying on the floor, and I just started sobbing, and I realized I had a lot of hurt. It was really a traumatic thing, and I never really kind of let it out. And in that moment, I felt really free. And I talked to a lot of people and a counselor about it, and they're like, "Yeah, you're traumatized by that, and it's okay to grieve to grieve in those moments. And you know, I was really supported by family and friends, and I'm sure you were as well. But
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
feels so violating when somebody comes into your space, rummages through all your stuff. It just feels so icky, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely understand what you're saying. I didn't have a like kind of emotional meltdown like that.
You're like,
Well,
Dave,
it's
you're a
not a
pansy.
meltdown. I didn't have an emotional incident. I guess
Yeah.
that's what the word I'd use. I
Well, everybody
w-
deals with it differently.
yeah, and that didn't happen. But what happened to me was I couldn't work anymore. I basically couldn't go into the studio and not feel like I don't want to be here. Right. I walked into the studio
Mhm.
every day, or like whenever I walk in, I'm like I don't want to be here anymore. And I would just for the first like month, I literally just kept going and cleaning and trying to, I was taking inventory, right? Because I've run a business through, it's my business, right? So I had to go through just piles of paperwork and receipts and trying to figure out what was there, what was not. Um, but in
Yeah.
terms of like content creation, I couldn't go in there and shoot a video. I shot, I think like one or two more videos after that of items that I found. Basically, I
Hmm.
did a katana video where like, hey, they stole the wrong katana. There was like, I had two boxes. I had like
I
four
saw that video.
katanas.
That video has a lot of views, doesn't it? It's got like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like my number one performing video, which is kind of
yeah, it's
weird
got
that it happened from a theft.
1.1 million. Yeah,
Yeah,
1.1 million views on that
yeah.
video.
It was a katana that I really loved. I saved up. It was a lot of money. It's like a $5,000 katana, right? So
Good Lord.
so
Yeah.
I when I bought it, I was actually in Japan when I bought it, and it was my first real Japanese katana that I purchased. So to me that was like a very
Mhm.
it was like a prized possession, right? So not
Yeah.
really like I don't love the katana, but it was like a really cool piece of like gear to own, and
Yeah.
so they stole another one that was a little bit less. I mean, still it was still a couple $1,000, but so I was like I should celebrate this. So I posted that, and then I found some
Yeah.
knives. They stole some really expensive knives that were like a couple $1,000s a piece, but they also like stole knives that were like $25. Like knives are in plastic clamshells that they must have just recognized the name or something, or they thought it was an easy grab, so they grabbed a bunch of those. And then there was right next to it, there's a trash can with like a $3,000 knife that was still in it, and
Oh wow.
so like
Yeah.
so it was like oh like, I'm gonna celebrate these little kind
Little
of
wins.
comebacks, yeah.
And
Yeah,
I can, it's I'm glad we're talking about this first because it is something we can both really relate with. I also was kind of, in addition to that one moment, but I was kind of I felt like I just got in a weird slump creatively, and I wasn't. It really wasn't until Indie Mogul that I started like kind of really working again. I was still doing Kinotika at the time, and I was making one video a week, but my kind of happy-go-lucky attitude really changed. I got really kind of depressed. Anyways, I'm just so thankful that we're able to do this. I don't really know exactly what caused you and I to become friends over the internet, but I don't know if you reached out or if I did or
I
what.
think I
But
reached out to you if I remember correctly. I was actually I'm pretty sure it was I saw
Kitty,
Kitty's
yeah,
video of her at like VidCon, like
uh-huh,
YouTube Con in Anaheim.
yep,
And
VidCon. Yeah, we did a little collab
yeah,
at VidCon.
she did a really quick interview of you about why you moved to LA, or
Uh-huh.
to California, and you said you and your wife prayed about it. I was like, I think this guy might be a brother, so let me just reach out to him.
Yeah,
And so I sent you I guess I sent you either email, or it must have been an email I got from your
I think it was an email.
about me on the YouTube
Yeah,
about tab, and so I think that was just it.
that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think as you say all that, that does. I remember that, and I think I was just like, here's my phone number. Like,
Yeah.
email is dumb. Like,
Yeah.
because I was like, I don't want to have a conversation over email. Let's become friends. And so we did, and then I started following your videos, and they're amazing. And like, But there's a whole nother layer to you too. Like I only knew you as the knife YouTube guy, but then it's like, oh wait, no, he runs an entire business and designs these things. Like, so it's really amazing what you do, and being a father yourself, and Christian and like all that. It's pretty awesome. So just tell me about yourself, and I kind of want to get to know you. Like, where are you from? How did you get started in this whole knife thing? I mean, it's so amazing what you do.
Huh. Well, thank you. That was much more than I would say about myself. But uh, yeah, man, I got really lucky with what I'm doing. I'm from Boston. I was raised in Boston. Born in Vietnam. I came here when I was like 1,
Wow.
and so came to Boston, and then my senior year of high school, I dropped out of high school and moved to LA because I thought I wanted to be an actor. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, and I didn't want to be an actor. The reality was, now that I think back, as an adult looking back in my life, I really needed to just get away from Boston.
Mm,
Boston for me was very toxic. There was a lot of things that weren't going well for me, and a lot of my friends, a lot of my childhood friends, were having a lot of legal issues, gang issues, drug issues, and I just knew that if I stayed any longer, I would have just get caught up
yeah.
in that lifestyle. So
Wow.
I had no, in my mind, I was like, I just need to go. So I literally just dropped out of high school and packed my bags, had 2
Mm,
suitcases and $300 to my name.
wow. What
Um,
did your, I mean, did you just not tell your parents or what?
I was living alone already, so I didn't need any
Oh,
permission at that time. So
okay.
I've been living alone at that time for years. So I was 18 when I left Boston. I had been on my own paying rent, like,
What do you mean? What do you mean you were living on your own? You're a kid. You're a
I was a
child.
kid,
What?
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, there's a whole layers of this thing. Like my
Yeah.
my father was my father left the home when I was about 12 or so, 11 or 12. He left the home, and
Wow.
he's had at that time. He just the marriage wasn't working, and he decided to bounce. And when I was about 15, kind of around 15, my mother, uh, she said to me one day, she's like, "Hey, listen, I need to move to this other part of town called Worcester. It's like an hour out of Boston." She says, "I'm buying a billiard hall there, and I can't afford to, to like pay to rent." I said, "Fine, you go. It's fine. I'll just stay here." I was already working as a lifeguard at the time, so I already had a full-time job after high school. During high
Oh,
school, after school, I would go and work. And so
wow.
she went, and yeah. So during high school, my entire high school career, I would go to school. I wake up at 6 a.m., go to school. Then at 1:30, I leave school, get to my first job at 2 p.m. I'd work from like 2 to 6 at the daycare. It's a after school program
Mm-hmm.
for like first to like third graders or something. And then from there, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., I went to work as a lifeguard. And
Wow.
then inside the school, there's a pool there, which is a great job because I just walk 30 seconds
Yeah.
down and I'm at my next job. And then from 9 p.m. till midnight, I worked at the gym, which was also connected to the school. So the gym had this
Mm.
had a volleyball and basketball league that every single night there was a club working out. So I basically had a full-time job from 2 p.m. till midnight that I worked through my entire high school.
So while all your friends in high school are probably living, your standard childhood of just hanging out and playing video games or whatever, like you were working your butt off and living
Yeah,
on your own.
yeah,
Did
that's all I
I'm sure
knew.
you had other friends that knew this, right? Like people would come
No one knew I
over
worked that much, and the reason why I say that is like now that I look back, now that
yeah, you're an adult with kids now, so
yeah, and I would visit back in Boston over the last 20 years now since I've been gone, and people were like, "Oh, I remember you. You used to be such a party animal." I'm like, when? Like, how? That there was no such thing. I was paying
yeah.
rent when you were partying. I was working. I was literally working till midnight every night,
So they were
and
just
they had no. People
imagining,
just had no idea. They were. I mean, which is
yeah.
to me really, it's one of those things now that. Uh, it I wouldn't say it's disappointing, but it shows how little people knew of my
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of my closest friends had no idea. Actually, I would say 99% of my friends had no idea. Only
Wow.
one or two persons, if you ask today what was Ricky like, they can tell you he worked all the time. He had no time to party. He had no time to be rowdy. He literally worked his entire high school life.
Wow.
But yeah, that was my
So you want to get out of there? Yeah.
yeah,
Makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. And at the same time, so while I was working, a lot of my friends who I grew up with weren't working. They became drug dealers. They were getting into drugs. They were doing a lot of just really crazy things.
Wow.
And so I knew that if I stuck around, I would either get pulled into that somehow. It would happen around me. I might be associated with them at some point. And they said, you know what, it's time to take Ricky out. So I don't know what it was, right? I just needed to go.
Yeah.
So
Good for you. Crazy.
yeah, because I was paying rent, I didn't have much money in my bank, right? I was making, 1,500 bucks, whatever, a month, working all those jobs, making 450 bucks, 450 at $6 an hour.
Yeah.
So I had
Jeez.
enough to pay for rent. I had enough to pay for a car, insurance, gas, food. So by the time it was time to leave, I had literally just 300 bucks in the bank, and it was time to
Wow.
go. Yeah, I bought my ticket. That was was left over. Um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, flight ticket.
yeah, it was a one-way ticket.
Wow.
Um,
That's a big step, man.
yeah, uh,
Did you ever get your GED or your diploma or
so
anything? Or?
I got my high school diploma. I want to say 5 or 6 years after I moved out to LA. So after I moved to
Mhm.
LA, I worked in, I worked, even though I didn't want to be an actor, I did end up working in Hollywood for a little while. I managed to
Mm.
book half a dozen national commercials. I booked 2 films with Jet Li. I
Wow.
booked a couple of spots on some TV shows, just as a small, really small roles, 1 or 2 liners.
Yeah.
So I had a relatively successful. I was living. I didn't have to get a job as a waiter, as a waitress in LA. I was actually a working actor, believe it or not. And
That's cool. And you're young, so yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was really life. Like, I mean, it wasn't all roses and peaches, but for the first year in
Sure.
LA, that was definitely the one of the hardest years of my life. I ended up
Yeah.
having to live out of my car for a little while, and
Wow.
uh,
How'd you get it? I mean, yeah. How'd you even get a car if you went out there with 300 bucks?
yeah.
I mean,
So when I moved out there, I had an uncle who lived in Orange County, so I crashed on his floor. Literally, it was on his floor.
wow.
My father, we were kind of on speaking terms again. I said, hey, I'm here in LA. Could you help me with a loan on a car? So he didn't loan me any money. He put a down payment on a car for me, which got repoed in like 6 months. It wasn't. It
Oh,
was a bad decision on my part, but he did help me get a down payment on a car. He says, I'll put a down payment for you, but you're gonna make all the payments.
yeah.
So I was working at a modeling, basically at an agency, and I wasn't making much. I was making just enough to like buy food, and at the time pay for the car and pay for a room that I was renting for my house. And
Hmm.
then I got kicked out of the house because the guy sold the house, or kicked out of the room. He sold the house, and this is
Yeah.
like 3 months. 3 months of
You weren't
being in
really
LA.
you weren't kicked out for being like a
Yeah.
bad person.
No,
It
no,
was just
no.
like
He sold the house. I didn't know. I didn't have any friends in LA. So he said, "Hey, you gotta go like next week." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So all right. So I was like, I don't know a single soul in LA. So
Wow.
I
Where were you in LA? Do you know?
yeah. So I was living in Granada Hills, so in the valley.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
then for some reason, I ended up. Oh, I was in Alhambra. So I spent about 3 months living in my car in Alhambra and West Hollywood.
Wow.
Yeah. So the reason I chose Alhambra was because I met some people at church that lived in Alhambra area. So I had dinner out there. So I knew the area a little bit. And there was a park right in the middle of Alhambra where I actually ended up living in an apartment. Like later on, after I got out of my slump, I lived in this apartment for about, I want to say
Hmm.
5 years or so, maybe 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Um, But yeah, but there was a park there that it was a nice public park, and every morning I'd get up at, you know, 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. I drive. I would drive into West Hollywood because I was working at I was in the mailroom at this agency, at this management office, and so from like 6 a.m., you know, we had breakdowns, right? So if you're in film, TV, you know, there's breakdowns that come out like at 5:45, 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Then all the agents are calling up their talent. And so I was working in the mailroom, like just shuffling photos and calling up actors. Hey, you got an appointment at this time. You got an appointment at that time. And I would show up really early so I would get into the building like extra early before anybody was there. So I get in around 5 a.m. I'd wash my face, use the bathroom, do my thing. And then the office staff would come in. They're like, man, you're always here early on time. I'm like, yeah, I'm cool. You know, I like being on time. They had no idea I was living out of my car, right? Yeah. And so I did that for 3 months, and then finally somebody from my church mentioned to another guy, he's like, hey, Ricky doesn't have a home. He's been homeless. You guys have a couch you can borrow. So to this day, you know, I love, there's Wesley, Jimmy, Justin, and David. Like, these guys gave up their homes. Like, they gave me a couch to live on for 6 months.
That's awesome.
And so, trying to make this long story short, in December, right around November, December, I was called in for a haircut. It was the most random phone call. So at this point, I hadn't really booked any jobs yet. I've only booked like one Discover commercial, which paid me whatever, a couple $1,000, but that was it. So I'm broke. I'm like there's like negative. My bank is such a bad number. It was negative $2,000 in my bank account. Right. I had with like Vegas kept hitting me with fees, and it was just nasty.
Yeah.
But then this casting director called me, and he goes, hey, you know, we want you to come in for a screen test and a haircut. I said, okay. Like, this is really random. I don't know what that is. I've never heard of
haircut?
that. Yeah. Yeah. It literally was a screen test and a haircut.
Okay.
And so I borrowed, you know, I had no car, right? At this time, I've got no car. Like, things are bad. Like, things are like, I'm eating 10-cent ramen a day for like the last 6 months. Like, I have no idea how I got out of that mess. But
wow.
But I showed up. I borrowed my roommate's car. So that morning, my roommate Wesley, he goes, hey man, take my car, show up to this audition. You know, get that job. I drive him to work. I take his car, go to the audition, and I go sit into this room in Marina Del Rey. Like, I sit down, and there's like, I'm in a room with like two dozen Asian guys. Like, you know, we all look the same. Half of them look like me. Other half are like really big or really tall, whatever. Just a bunch of Asian guys, right?
That's what casting is.
Yeah.
It's like they're very direct. We need a fat white guy.
Yep.
You know, like
Yep.
it's like, you can't be racist about it. It's just that's what we need.
That's just how it is. And so, you know, we all sat there and we're like, oh, what's this for? And then a couple of people were like, oh, I heard Jet Li's here. I heard, you know, so and so is here. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Wow.
And then the AD comes walking in, and he says, you stay, everyone else go home. So like, he sent everyone home except for me and like 5 guys. And then,
is this before you say anything?
No, we didn't say anything yet. Yeah, this is before the haircut. This is just like, they walked in, they said, everyone else go home, you 3, you 4 stay here. And I remember sitting there like,
the sad life of an actor.
Yeah, it's terrible.
A lot of rejection.
It's terrible. And so I remember just sitting there like, what is going on? Like, at this point, it's been an hour. We're just talking to each other. We have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And finally, they said, Ricky Tran, come on in, go into the trailer, get your haircut. So I sit down, get my haircut. And, okay, haircut's done. Half an hour later, we go back into the room. And then it was like, you stay, everyone else go home. So now it's only me and as one other guy.
Oh, wow.
And,
so after the haircut, they made a decision already. Yeah.
Okay,
so
then
these two.
Yeah. And so, but his name is, ironically, his name is Jeff. We actually are still friends. He's 6 foot,
Cool.
he's like 6'2", tall, super tall Asian guy. And, but he had a good haircut, right? They cut his hair just right. So they called me in, and they called Jeff in, and we sit in this trailer, and then along comes Jet Li. Jet Li comes, sits down right between the two of us. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is not happening, all right? And Jet's
Surreal.
quiet, right? He's really quiet. And he just looks at me. He goes, "Hey." I said, "Hi," and then Jet gets his haircut modeled after mine. And
Huh. Okay.
so basically they were testing two or three makeup artists and haircut people, like who are they going to keep for this production. That's basically what they were doing. And
Okay.
so
So they had different hair people,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they were using all of you
as
as
hair
test
models, just
dummies.
as, yeah, exactly, yeah,
That's
yeah. And so after that
Jet-
yeah, it's so weird, right? And
Hollywood is so weird. That's so weird. I
so
love
we
it.
go, yeah, it's so then after that we get called onto stage. So now we go onto the stage, and they actually sent Jeff home. They said, "Hey, you can go home. You're done." Because they were like, "Hey, do you?" They asked me, they're like, "Have you ever worked as a stand-in before?" I said, "No, I don't even know what it was." Like I said, "Sure, I can do it." So they said, "Come on stage, come on in," and they stood me right next to Jet, right? And like I walk
Hmm.
in, and Jet's entire stunt team is there. Like there's like four other guys that look and are size just like Jet, right? And they're all
Yeah.
speaking Chinese. And then they see me walking in. They don't, they kind of just acknowledge me. And then I'm standing there under the lights, and there's cameras. The director's talking to me. The AD is talking to me. Um, the gaff. All these guys are like just saying, "Hey, Ricky, do this, do that, walk here, walk there, look this way." I'm just taking direction. And then
Yeah.
next thing you know, Jet comes walking in. He stands like right in front of me, and we're looking at each other. And he says, "Both of you guys look this way. We took this way. Walk this way." So we look at each other one more time, and he like throws me a punch. Right? He punches my chest. He's just being playful. I'm like, "Oh, dude, this guy's like, he was
Oh,
my
okay.
my childhood hero."
Wow.
I'm like, "This is so cool." And I was like, I'm like, "Hey, I didn't know what to say to him. I didn't say anything to him." So the day was over. They paid me like $300 for the day for the haircut and for my time. I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And then on the way home, the first AD came out. He goes, "Hey, are you available in January for a shoot?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." He says, "It's a 6 month shoot. If you're available, you can be Jet stand-in for the next 6 months." And
Oh
this
my
is like, I'm
gosh.
like, "Oh,
So I get to hang out with Jet Li every day for
yeah,
6 months.
yeah." And like it's all union rates too, right? So I'm being paid like in union rates,
Wow.
which was to me, it came out to like, I don't know, two or $3,000 a week that I was paid, but
Dude, well,
it,
that got you out of the hole.
yeah, it completely changed my life. Like that haircut,
That
literally
haircut.
that haircut, that was like the life changing haircut for me.
You know what's funny is that it really was kind of like a random thing because it was all based on the hairstylist that got you that job, right? Like, because everybody else looked the same or whatever, right? Like, is that
Yeah.
what how it got selected down to you is the haircut, or also your size? Maybe you were
we're
more his
we're the
his
same
size.
we're the same size. We're like physically we wore the same clothes. Which was
Oh,
and
okay,
wardrobe was really easy because they would just like when I had a stand in for Jet, they would just give me his clothes. It was really simple.
perfect. Well, and your buddy Jeff is too tall,
Jeff
so
was yeah, he was over 6 foot tall. And
so yeah, so that was the other. So there was two parts to that: the haircut selection, and the fact that you were the perfect stand-in for Jet.
yeah.
So yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So your name is in the credits. What
Yeah.
what movie was it?
It was in The One.
Okay,
It's
awesome. I don't
it's a
think I've seen that
sci-fi
one,
movie. It wasn't his greatest movie. Uh,
but it was your favorite.
but it was
right?
it was my that changed my life, right? That um
And you got
and
to see that must have been fun to like stand there and see the crew working and like really see what real filmmaking is like.
yeah. That was looking back now, we weren't allowed to have cameras. This is 20 years ago. We weren't allowed to have cameras on set back then. No cell phones. Like the iPhone didn't
Sure.
exist yet. And you
Yeah.
actually everyone had to sign a clause. You weren't allowed to actually bring cameras on set. Or sign an agreement. So looking
Yeah.
back now, I'm like, man, filming today, if I worked in the same job today, would look so different. I would make a whole vlog podcast series out of it. As a
Yeah.
creator now, it would be so different. But no, back then I was very young, wide-eyed, and
And what a blessing
yeah,
it financially got you stable.
yeah, I became yeah. Then after that, like jobs started pouring in. After that, like when it rains, it pours. It's kind of true in a sense. Like after that, I booked a couple of national commercials. And then Jets folks called me. They called me again. Like, hey, we have another film coming next year. You want to work with us again next year? So that was Cradles to the Grave. So we worked for 4 months on that film, and for the next 3 or 4 years, I kept booking jobs. I kept booking commercials, and that's kind of like my California story. Like that's my success story. Then after that, life really just took a. I almost kind of cruised, through life after that.
Well, tell me, what an amazing story. I mean, it is nuts. And you were so young, and what a amazing kind of difference from your Boston experience to be able to come to LA to kind of, struggle obviously at the beginning, but then have this amazing friends, and then these opportunities that then you created, through God. He really gave you this opportunity to become your own man and have your own life in LA. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been amazing to look back and that's why now when things happen, when negative things happen to me, I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
It's all good, man. Like
it makes a lot more sense now. Yeah, the robbery conversation.
Yeah. It takes a lot to make me worry. It takes a lot to get me stressed. It takes a lot to get me upset.
Mm-hmm. That's not an invitation for people to come back and rob you again, but
no. I mean, it's all material goods anyways. I don't.
What have you learned since getting robbed? Have you set up anything to prevent?
So I got two separate security systems now.
Yeah,
me too. Two separate alert systems. So it costs me a lot more per month now, but which is fine. It's minimal. It's one of those things. You can't prevent it necessarily. You can minimize it.
You can move to a state like Tennessee where everybody's sweet to one another.
Yeah.
That was a big wake up call for me being a Nashville boy. It was like, I kind of trust everybody because where I come from in the South, like you kind of can trust everybody. It's just a different culture, But anyways, tell me about the samurai swords, the knives, the blades, all that. Where does that fall in? Because I haven't heard that at all in your story yet.
Yeah, so my YouTube it came a lot later on, right? So you heard the first 5 years of me being in LA. That's that was
20 years ago.
That was 20 years ago. That's when it all started.
So I guess you got married at some point as well. Yeah,
so I basically moved to Canada. Right after that time in LA, I said, you know what? I need to do something different. I'm sick of Hollywood. I can't show up to another audition and pretend I have this Asian broken down accent. I can't sound that way. It was just too demeaning for me to show up and just this is how I talk, right? I mean, I don't have a perfect, I guess, American accent, but I can't. It's hard for me to sound Chinese. It's hard for me to sound Vietnamese when speaking English, right? Or actively try to sound like I have this weird accent. Yeah. So, I probably went to a couple hundred auditions in the 5 years that I lived in LA, and I remember 99% of those auditions, they say, "Hey, can you sound more Asian? Can you sound more fob, fresh off the boat?" It was just audition after audition, sound more Asian. And one day, it was today I can still remember it so clearly. It was my very last audition, and the casting director said, "Hey, can you sound more Asian?" I'm like, "No, I can't sound more Asian. This is how I sound." And at that point I realized, and she was Asian too, which is and to me that was really insulting. I'm like, "You're Asian too. You don't sound like the way you're trying to make me sound. You and I speak the same language. We're both speaking English, clear English."
And the role is that you're playing an English speaking person too. Yeah. It's not like you're speaking a foreign language.
Yeah, it wasn't a period piece. It wasn't anything like that. It was just another kid. It was a high school or a young adult. And so I'm like, well. So anyways, I walked out of the auditions. I was like, I'm never showing up.
That was 20 years ago. Hopefully things have changed a little bit, but I doubt it.
I don't know. I still talk to people today, and they're saying it's not that different. I'm sure it is for some some degree. To some degree, I'm sure it's different. But
Anyways.
yeah. So I just said, you know what, this is it. I'm done. I'm never coming back. I'm never gonna go show up. And since then, I've never showed up to another audition for anything.
Good for you.
And yeah. So then after
So
that,
you moved to Canada? I mean, that's
yeah, I
random.
moved to
Why'd you
Canada
move to Canada?
because a year within that year, I became a speed skater. So I picked up short track ice
Man,
speed skating.
You do everything, man. That's
I kind of
crazy.
go all in. All in. And you know, I just watched Apollo Ono win the gold medal at the Olympics, and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna go speed skate. And so I picked up speed skating. I got quick,
That's awesome.
fast, and I wasn't that fast, but I got quick. I got fast pretty quickly. And so I said, you know what? Let's go train at the Olympic Oval in Canada, in Calgary, Alberta. So I set in my qualifying times. I said, hey, I'm this fast. I want to train there for the next 3 years for the Olympics. Hopefully I can make it. So they said, all right, come on up. And so I moved to Canada, packed my bags. I had, I didn't drive, I flew up there. So I flew to Canada, found an apartment, lived there for a year, training through one whole season. And things were actually looking pretty good until I got into an accident. I came back to LA one night. I came back to LA. I had to do some visa stuff. I had to go back every 3 months. And on one of my trips back, I was in a car accident. So it wasn't life threatening, but I had a pretty bad concussion, and I was off the ice for a while. And my vision wasn't very great after that. I had I guess some very slight nerve damage with my eyes. I couldn't focus very easily, so I couldn't train for like nearly 3 months, 4 months. And so after that, I kind of lost it. I lost the passion for the ice. I said, you know what, let's go another direction for a little while. So came back. I got a job at a bike shop of all places. So I worked at a bike shop for the next year or two, or for about a year, and then I got recruited to work at an auto dealership, it was an Audi auto dealership, which I worked with for like 6 months, and I was like, okay, I'm done here. So then I moved to San Francisco. So I drove my car. At this time, now I'm like, all right, I'm doing well. I drove to San Francisco. I lived in San Francisco for 2 years. That's where I met my wife. My girlfriend at the time, who's my current wife. Yeah. And I lived there for 2 years. And then she moved away for 3 years. We did 3 years long distance. She did. Oh, that's rough. She lived in Venezuela for 2 years, and then she came back to California. Then she had to go to Northern California to go to school, and I moved back to LA to just to work and go to school at Santa Monica College and at UCLA. So I transferred. I eventually finished college. Yeah. And then now so that's like the next 5 years of my life, right? Yeah. And then we got married.
It's like in your 20s, early 20s?
Mid-20s now, yeah. Mid-20s now.
Yeah.
And we got married. And then 3 years after we got married, we had our first kid, which was like 6 years ago. And so my YouTube channel is like a year younger than my oldest daughter. So my oldest daughter, she's 6. My YouTube channel is 5. This is my 5th year doing it.
That's awesome.
The reason it started was because when she was napping, I was like, I need to find something to do. Like, I don't have anything to do. So so this is where the whole knives and swords come in. So I was like, I want some knives for the kitchen. I want to cook some more. I want to, have some sharp knives to work with. So I went on the internet, did some searches for the best knives, saw some knife forums, discussions. But at that time, there was no YouTube channel. YouTube was just kind of starting to blow up, right? It was becoming like there was a lot of tech reviews at the time, but there was nothing like knife reviews. There was a lot of recipe channels. There was a lot of exercise channels. There's a few car channels and lots of tech channels that were kind of up and coming. But there was no knife channel. So I said, everything I'm reading on the internet on these knife forums, it doesn't make sense to me. They're all contradicting each other. They're contradicting what I'm finding out about the knives. Because I went and bought $2,000 worth of knives and stones just to play for myself. I wasn't planning to
Oh
do
my
any sort of
goodness.
YouTube channel. It was just for myself. Um, this is my extreme personality. When I
Yeah,
try something, I go all in, right? So I
that's how I am, dude. Same
yeah.
exact thing.
Yeah, and so that's kind of how I live. And so I bought all these knives and all these stones. I started sharpening them. I started using them. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna post my findings on YouTube about what I'm learning about these knives and what I'm learning about these stones. So yeah,
How'd you come up with the name?
I don't remember how it was. Basically, like it was more
I
like
mean, obviously Ricky, but
yeah. So
the
perfection was when you're sharpening a knife, you're looking for the burr. When you develop a burr
okay.
on one
I didn't
side,
know
it
that.
basically lets you know that you've completed sharpening on that side, and then you flip the knife over and sharpen the other side. So basically, trying to perfect the burr, perfection.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
so
just like Kinotika. It doesn't mean anything at all. It's just a word.
yeah, yeah. So,
But yours actually means something.
yeah, yeah. So after the first year of YouTube, I actually did which is something I don't I did the first channel was actually Ricky Tran channel. It was basically just a hobby channel. I was building bikes on the channel. I was building wheels on the channel, bike wheels, road bikes. I was reviewing
You're just doing everything.
Yeah, I was just having fun. It was just like nap time. I'm gonna just turn the camera on and talk about a new pair of shoes I just purchased. And I was doing I was working out during my kids' nap times. I would also do the Rose Bowl run, So I would take my kid to the Rose Bowl on the stroller and I
Yeah.
would run, and I would test a new pair of sneakers. So I would just post a video about that. And then towards the end of that, I posted like a couple of videos about knives. And so that was like in June of 5 years ago. Oh, 6 years ago now, almost 6 years ago. I didn't post any videos for 6 months, and I took my kids, my Sierra, my 6-year-old, and she was only almost 1.5. She was like 1 and 3 months or something. My wife and I went to Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji for 5 weeks, and then when we came back in July, I didn't post any videos for the rest of the year, but the channel kept on growing, and then
Huh. For one video.
from just a few videos, and then
A
basically in January of 17,
Uh-huh.
almost 20, I don't, somewhere around there, 16. I said, you know what, I'm gonna post just knife videos because it's something I'm really interested in. I have a new channel called Perfection, and then at the end of the first year, the channel grew like 40,000 subscribers, and
That's pretty good, man.
yeah, so that was it. That's kind of how I ended up here. So 5 years later, I'm still doing what I'm doing.
So I think there's a lot of takeaways from that story. It's that if you want to do YouTube and you see kind of a hole in the market, or like there is, I mean, you obviously were reading these forums. There's clearly people who are interested in knives. You're reading all these forums and blogs and stuff, but you were like, there's no videos. And so like you
Yeah.
literally saw a need for that and recognized that. And I think there was probably a lot of pent up desire for somebody to do that. And it's kind of like, well, I guess I'll be the guy that does this, And
Yeah, and I am not. People don't realize this, but I'm very camera shy. It takes me forever to turn the camera on, and yeah,
I
like
wouldn't know that. I mean, you're an actor in Hollywood.
I'm not an actor. I was never a trained actor. I was terrible at acting. That's why I never, that's why I never booked any leading roles.
Sure, but but I mean, it is interesting that, like, in a weird roundabout way, you're able to go back to being, in front of the camera again, but now in a different way, and kind of by your own terms. You don't have to use a stupid accent. You can be
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of YouTube. I think for a lot of people is like, for me, it was always really a creative outlet first and
Yeah.
foremost, and then it became like a really good hobby. Then it became a life sustaining channel, or lifestyle sustaining channel. That you can earn
Yeah.
a living off of it.
So yeah, I mean, I'm on your channel right now, and you've got a couple of videos that are huge, big time. 1.7 million views, biggest knife sharpening lie online. That's your number one video.
Is it
right
really?
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do
and
a
then
poor job looking at analytics.
number two is $150 electric sharpener versus $150 whetstone set that's 1.5 million. It's like I don't even know what any of those things are,
Yeah,
but there's
yeah,
1.5 million people interested in it.
yeah.
That's really fascinating. Um, $20 knife versus $160 knife is cheaper, better. That's a great title, great thumbnail, 1.2 million views. So you've got one, two, three, four, five videos that are over a million, and then several others past, you know, 300,000, 500,000. So it's pretty amazing. And like you said, you've been able to create a sustaining business. At what point for you with your YouTube journey did you actually kind of be like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously, learn the business side? Was there like a course that you took or a book that you read or somebody that you met that kind of helped guide you through how to run a YouTube business?
No. So I think because of my time in Hollywood, I hate networking and I hate calling up people to say, "Hey, I'm so and so. Can we do a collab? Can we talk? Can you help?" So I have to this day, I've never done any sort of YouTube class. I've never done any sort of YouTube marketing. I don't look at YouTube analytics the way I probably should or could. I ran the channel as a hobby.
Hmm.
You know, to this day, I still think I still don't know how to work my cameras correctly. Right, my audio. I'm like, I have all this great audio gear and camera gear. I don't know how to use them to their fullest potential yet. Um,
Uh-huh.
it's terrible to say that, but no,
It's okay. I mean, you're not a, yeah, it's fine. You don't have to be
yeah.
a
Um,
camera whiz with it.
Yeah, I've just kind of I would learn the skills as I felt like I needed to. So when I needed to learn how to make audio better, I went out to bought some gear and test and just do a lot of testing. I watch a couple of reviews here and there, but I don't know. I find that I just enjoy more of the process when I'm just learning myself. It's the hard-headed side of
Yeah,
me.
I
Um,
can relate.
Yeah, I've never taken a YouTube how to YouTube class. I've never watched a how to YouTube video. I remember a long time ago, like my first year doing YouTube, there was is that vidIQ or something like that, or
Uh-huh.
um,
vidIQ. Yeah. There's TubeBuddy, vidIQ.
yeah. I think I had one of those, either vidIQ or TubeBuddy on like that was installed on my YouTube channel, and
Yeah.
I remember like whenever I watched a video, like either a review or something, and they would say, oh, okay, your channel relative to the video you're watching. Like, so I would like compare
All the
channels.
stats.
Yeah, I'm like, why would I? And then it just, you know, like I'm a numbers guy. I love numbers, right? And so I got so caught up with trying to like analyze my channel, compare my channel to another channel. I'm like, you know what? And after like a month of it, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Forget it. I can't. I don't care how my channel is doing relative to anybody else's channel. Like, I don't care. So I deleted, that analytics program from my YouTube channel. I've never looked at it since. I don't look at how many subscribers I have anymore. Um, I don't really. I read comments when I have time to read comments. But I don't live for comments. I don't live for thumbs up. I don't live for subscribers. For at this point, I
I think that's a good, I think that's healthy because at the end of the day, you're trying to, as long as you're making money and you're focusing on the things that can provide for your family and that's working itself out and you're able to balance that with your life and have a healthy, workflow with that. That's great. And maybe it would be beneficial as things continue to grow. And if you want to scale your business, hiring somebody to do that for you, that way you're not stressing yourself out or it's not influencing you in a negative way. And then someone else can kind of do it for you or something. I don't know, just an idea
yeah, yeah, sure. It's I do
or not.
every year for the last 3 years, I would go for periods of like 4 to 6 months, and I would not post anything. And so my channel, if you actually look at the timestamps of my videos when they were posted, you'll see like from like 2018 onwards, I'll go for like
Hmm.
4 to 6 months without posting a single video. And that's just because for me, like when I need time off, I just take the time off. I don't
Yeah.
follow the weekly posting, guidelines recommendations that a lot of YouTube channel gurus say. They say you gotta
Yeah.
post twice a week, you gotta post once a week at the exact same time. I've stopped doing that a long time ago. Um, and just because
What's
I
your
go ahead,
sorry? What I mean, what's your main focus then? Are you like,
I
are
post
you
when I
looking
can.
for? Are you? But are in terms of the content, because maybe you're not posting every single week. Are you kind of always on the lookout for the perfect idea or like the perfect thing to talk about that people are interested in, or you just do whatever
I just post
you
whatever
like?
I'm using. So basically, I will use a knife for a month, 6 month, and then I post a video on it. Or I'll use
Wow.
my
Yeah.
my more recent cutting board video. I used it was a video that was 2 years in the making. I tested basically like a dozen cutting boards. It took me 2 years to test all of them. Then I just posted my findings like a
No.
month ago.
Well, see, I can see why people find value in that and why they don't need you to post every week because there's so much value in that review. I mean, you just said it took you 2 years. I mean, I hate to admit it, but with Kinetica, I would open the box of the camera and then we just start shooting like with no experience. Like I've never used this. These are my first impressions, but here you go. Oh yeah. I mean, I guess in a way that is some value. It's like my first impression is this is bad, you know. But that was also because we were on a twice a week schedule, and it was literally a job. It was like clock in, clock out, upload. It's like I don't know what I'm gonna do this week. Just make something up. Let's go, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So um,
Yeah,
I think
did you experience burnout doing that?
well, because I had Connor with Kinetica and then with Indie Mogul, because I had a team, two editors, a producer, it was a different, it's a different world when you're not just by yourself doing it, you know? And I loved having a little bit of that routine. Um, it wasn't, I treated it like a 9 to 5 kind of thing where Connor and I would meet up around 10 and then we would be done shooting, you know, around 2 and then we'd end up wrapping around 4 or 5. I didn't, I was like, I don't need to work more than 10 to 4 if I'm being honest, you know?
Sure, sure.
So, uh, as long as we were super hyper focused between 10 and 4, I was like, might as well spend more time with the family. So that's the beauty of working for yourself, you know, so
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of make your own schedule. But,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I would say having an assistant, having an editor and a shooter really changed the game for me, and I didn't find myself burning out uh, when I was on my own. When Connor left, we weren't able to continue working with him with Kinetica for about 4 months before I left and went to Indie Mogul. Those 4 months also are when the robbery happened and everything. So like I said earlier, I really struggled to get stuff done because I just didn't have any motivation. But Connor was the type of person that like he would text me in the morning and be like, "Hey, what are we doing today?" And like I had no idea what we were going to do. But just because he was an employee and he was just like ready to get to work, like him asking me, "What are you going to do today?" I had to think like, "Oh, yeah, what should we do today?" I mean, I'm paying him, like we need to do something, otherwise it's a waste of money, you know? So
Yeah, yeah.
and that really gave me a kick in the hiney to like actually get some crap done, you know? But um that was again, that was a completely different genre. It was a different situation than what you're in as well. I feel like Kinotika wasn't much of a personality channel. It was more of just like, I mean, I put a lot of my personality in it, obviously, but it was really all about anything that's new that comes out in the camera world. I'm going to talk about it, you know, that. And so when it comes to knives, speak to me like a complete noob, because I would imagine that a lot of people here who are listening to my show, and walk me through the different types of knives, the ones that you find the most fascinating. Because I know you got samurai stuff, you got kitchen knives, you've got, I would assume, self-defense weapons as well. I
Yeah, so
mean,
there's
there's
tactical
different
knives, there's hunting knives, there's what they call EDCs, everyday carry knives, but basically pocket knives. Then you have people who have, the Swiss knives. So there's lots of genres of knives. I mostly am currently I'm mostly fascinated by Japanese kitchen knives.
Mm.
And that's because I use them every single day. I love cooking, you know. So for me, the joy of using a knife that cuts the way a knife is supposed to cut, that stays sharp for a long time. To me, there's a lot of joy and pride in that. In terms of getting into knives, I mean, if we're talking just strictly kitchen knives, kind of my forte is there's German knives, then there's Japanese knives. Those are the two main categories of two main
Where
countries.
where do Cutco knives fall in that
Cutcos are made in
description?
America, I believe. I think they're made in New York, somewhere in New York, upstate New York. They've been around for a long time, you know.
Yeah, they have the pyramid scheme of like if you're
Multi-level.
a Cutco ambassador, you
Yeah.
go around and sell them. But they're good knives. Like we have a set.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, they're
that's all, that's
they,
the nicest. It's like, oh my gosh, this whole set was $1,200. This is like,
yeah.
for most people that's like ridiculous to spend that much money on knives.
Hmm.
But to you, that's like, no, I have one knife that's worth that much.
No, I wouldn't say that. Well, in my case, in my case, I'm not. I wouldn't put myself as the average knife consumer out there.
Yeah.
You know.
So you have German and
You have German and Japanese. Those are then there's also American knives. There's
It's
Spanish
like that with
knives.
cameras too, isn't it? You
It's the
have
same.
Leica
Those, yeah,
and
exactly.
Hasselblad,
Canon.
but
yeah.
then you got all the Japanese companies that
Yeah.
are really the winners. In
Yeah,
terms of
arguably they make the better product, right? The
Sony, Canon,
yeah.
Panasonic.
So then within those two major, but there's also a lot of knife people are gonna like jump in my case for not saying a lot of countries make knives. Vietnam's making a lot of knives. Thailand's making knives. Spain's making knives. Eastern Europe, they're not American-made knives are actually becoming, American factory-made knives are not really going anywhere, but you're also seeing a huge kind of resurgence of individual knife makers. So individual bladesmiths, they're becoming big as well. I don't think they'll ever go, quote unquote mainstream, but that's not where they want to be. But so, you have
Cool.
for the sake of the conversation, you have Germans and Japanese. Those are like the big categories. When you go to your big ticket retailers, it's going to be between German and Japanese knife. That's just, they make commercially speaking, they make the most reliable knives. And then from there, you have your carbon and stainless steel. So carbon knives are the knives that form patinas. They will rust if you leave them wet. If you cut an onion and you don't wash the knives within 15, 20 minutes, you'll see some, patinas and rust developing on that knife. Your stainless knives, you can't abuse them. They still will form rust, but they form rust a lot slower than your carbon steel knives.
That's probably something a lot of people don't know. They say, it's stainless steel. What's with this stain on it?
Yeah.
I think everything that I have that's stainless steel has stains on
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. Just look at your, if you have a stainless steel table, over time you'll see a color, kind of a light brown tint that will develop on it, or a yellow tint. It's something.
Yeah.
Stainless steel doesn't mean it will never stain or will never rust. It just forms a lot slower.
Yeah.
And then from there, then you'll have your steel, your different types of steels within stainless, different types of steels within carbon. And then from there, you have different heat treatments, which is how hard the knives tend to be.
Wow.
So the higher the hardness, it's on a Rockwell scale. So basically, I've only seen knives from like, let's say 50 up to 67. Like 67, that's like a $500, $1,000 knife. When you buy knives on Amazon, they're like, let's say you can go on Amazon and buy like a 15 or 16 piece knife set for like $30. Those are like Rockwell ratings. They're like 40. Like basically, if you cut butter, they'll bend themselves cutting butter.
Oh my goodness.
So so the knives that I tend to use are the knives in the 60 range and up. So those knives are in the $100 range or $80 range upwards of, I have knives that are like $2,000-$3,000. But people
You don't
buy.
have to spend that kind of
No,
money
you
either.
you can.
That's what your $25 versus
Yeah, that was only
$60.
demonstrating sharpness. But yeah, if you know how to sharpen a knife, you can make any knife as sharp as any other knife, cheap or expensive. I mean, my dad, my parents, as an example, they are incredible cooks. I'm talking like really amazing cooks. and looking back in my life, they used one knife their entire time that I was living with them. They made incredible
Mm-hmm.
meals with one knife that was purchased. It was probably like a $15 knife from from a Chinese supermarket, and
Wow.
they made incredible meals with it. Me, I've got a shop of like a lot of knives, right? I don't
Yeah.
there's no need to
You look
quote a
like
number,
you
but
look
I
like Gaston from Beauty and the Beast or something.
yeah,
It's just like
yeah, exactly,
a
yeah.
wardrobe full of them, and
Yeah,
yeah.
I have a lot of knives. If
What's your
my
job?
cooking skills was as was r- if my cooking skills was like it had a direct connection or like a relative level to my knives, I'd be the best cook in the world, right?
It's kind of like camera gear
Yeah,
YouTubers. It's like you have all these cameras, but like, are you actually good at
yeah,
shooting? Like,
right, yeah. So
but no, I mean the fascination for you is obviously with cooking and stuff, but you do have a genuine fascination and curiosity with just knives in general, and there's nothing wrong with that
yeah,
either.
yeah. No, I have. I mean, I admit I have an addiction when it comes to sharp knives and katanas. It's a healthy addiction because I can stop myself from buying knives, but I love the knives. So, I have a curiosity, a a genuine like fascination with quality knives, and it's mainly because I love cooking so much. If I didn't like cooking, it probably wouldn't matter to me as much, you know. But I love cooking, you know. Every Right now, I'm kind of on a kind of little kick where every single week I'm gonna try one or two new recipes every single week. Try
Mm.
different types of foods, and so I'm always constantly learning. And for me, this knife world I mean, I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now, right? I've kind of went from the place of just a guy searching for knives and trying to learn about knives to like the guy who a lot of people write to about trying to be people are asking me like what my thoughts are on every single knife that they see. So that has, in a sense, forced me to become even more educated than what I was a
Yeah,
year ago, 2 years ago.
it's your job now. Yeah.
So yeah,
So I mean, so what is your? Of course, you might have multiple answers to this depending on use case or whatever. But what is kind of your? If your parents were able to use one knife, if you were like stranded on an island and you could only take one knife, what is the one that you think would be the most versatile that you would enjoy using the most?
oh man, well, depends on what I'm
I mean,
cooking, I suppose. But
yeah, I mean, stranded on an island is probably not a good example because
yeah,
you would need something to kill animals with,
yeah,
and
yeah. You need
so
an
maybe it's
axe. You
just
need an
more of
arrow.
yeah, maybe it's
Uh,
just more of like in general. It,
yeah,
it sounds like it's hard for you to pick one. So let's just say, what are a couple of your favorites?
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't want to. I don't want to like pat myself too much in the back. I designed a knife that was really good. I designed a knife that I think is one of the
I
best
was
knives
gonna
I've
get to
used.
that
Yeah.
conversation, so
Um,
this is a good way to start it. You
yeah.
literally have your own knife.
Yeah. So
You made
that
it to your specifications. So of
yeah,
course it's
it took a few years to actually design. It
unbelievable.
was
And people can find it, by the way, on your website,
yeah, it's on
which
my
is store.perfection.com or
store
perfection, sorry,
perfection.
dot
Yeah,
com.
store.perfection.com.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes and the description of the video as well. And it's right on the homepage.
Yeah, so I spent many, through years and years of, well, really at that time, up until that point was like 3.5, nearly 4 years. Basically three whole years of just testing lots of knives, right? My channel at this point was, I've had, I don't know how many subscribers I got at this point, but it was after about 3 years, and I had a chance to go to Japan, and I met some knife makers there, and I started talking to them about, hey, you know what? I have an idea about a knife. It's not something they make very often, but I said, here are the specs. Can you try to make one for me? See what you guys think of it. They made it. And I made some adjustments to it, and so that was the very first one I made. It came out really, really nice. And then the second one that I made was it's a slightly more user-friendly version of the first one. It's
Hmm.
slightly easier to sharpen. It's easier for people to use who are getting into Japanese knives. It's a slightly more user-friendly knife, even though it has a very similar profile. So I'm really proud of that knife. It's not a knife that I talk about on my channel because I don't want to come across as the guy who's kind of pitching his own gear, kind of drinking his own Kool-Aid. It's the VG10 knife. The second knife. Yeah,
this one here?
That's the second. Yeah, that's knife number 2 that was designed.
I accidentally clicked that one.
Okay.
This one here?
Yeah.
VG10?
Yeah.
So that one's called your Perfection knife.
Yeah.
So VG10.
That was my second knife. Yeah. So this took a lot of time to quote unquote perfect, but I'm really proud of this knife. If this is
perfect,
if it's
come on, you mean
to perfect? Yeah. I get that a lot.
You didn't want to say it, but
but there are a lot of great knives out there. I'm really proud of that knife. It took me a long time to make,
and that's a sweet spot in terms of price as well.
Yeah,
that kind of $200 price point. It's not cheap by any means, but it's also not $1,000. I mean, this is kind of your right down the middle.
If you look at most of the knives on my channel, my store, you'll see knives upwards of $3,500.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin.
You can go to brand. Yeah. Just go to Gyoto. Okay, go to knife types, and then the first knife, like it's Gyoto. Yeah, click on that. And
is this video brought to you by Squarespace?
No. Are you sponsored by Squarespace?
No.
I have zero sponsors on my channel.
Really?
Yeah, 0. So you filter
That's
it.
Interesting.
Filter it by price. Go descending or something. Then you can see.
I think because I'm doing all this on Zoom, it's a little
bit slower. Yeah.
Slow. Yeah.
Price high or low. Yeah, I've actually never taken a paid sponsored deal on my channel.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me about. I mean, here we are on store.perfection.com. Tell me about that aspect of it, because I mean, we're literally using your site right now to filter through some of these knives. What is going on? I'm having an issue because my internet is crapping on me. I think it's actually not my internet. It's
probably just Zoom.
It's Zoom, and this computer. This is a 2016 base model 13-inch.
Oh, okay.
So
so the RAM's maxing out, huh?
I have 8 gigabytes of RAM, so it's probably dying right now.
You probably need to exit out all of your programs that you're using.
And I'm like recording things simultaneously.
Yeah. No, don't worry about it.
But okay, so Gyuto.
Yeah, Gyuto
is expensive.
Yeah, but if you want to see the most expensive knives, you need to go under the sashimi knives, the Yanagiba types.
Okay.
So click on the left-hand side. Go to go down. There's a should be a site called Honyaki. If you scroll down a little bit. Kitchen shear Japanese. Why is
what, like brands or?
Oh, let me see here.
But I mean, what are we talking about? Like $1,000?
No, 3,500 is I think the most expensive knives. Yeah, so it's right under what's new. If you look at on the left-hand side, there's a tab called What's New. Right below that, it's called Honyaki knives.
Okay.
So if you click on that, you'll see.
Oh, yeah, I scrolled down.
The first 2 knives were.
They're gorgeous, though. I mean.
Yeah, so those knives were actually a part of an archive from the company that we got them from, and they've saved them for a long time, and so it wasn't going to be for sale.
$3,500.
Yeah, but we
sold out.
Yeah, there was only one of each.
So you only have to sell one. But.
Yeah, so we get offers of these private collection knives once in a while.
Beautiful. Look at the handle on it. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
But yeah, the store actually was kind of it became kind of I wouldn't say a necessity, but what was happening was my channel, my YouTube channel was reviewing, I was reviewing things from as many people as I could, right? Good quality stuff. And a lot of the retailers, although the knife makers, they reached out. They said, hey, listen, we really like the stuff that you've been doing for on your channel for the last few years. We think that you're doing really great stuff representing our brand. And
Yeah.
I kind of became, for a lot of these companies that I now sell, I was the only person reviewing their product. I was the only person putting videos out talking about their products in a, in a relatively objective but subjective way. I mean, we got to be honest here. There's no such thing as a objective review, because every review,
Somebody
it's
gives it to
yeah,
you.
exactly. I was presenting knife sharpening in a way that was understandable, that was relatable to most people. And so a lot of them said, hey, if you ever decide to open a store, please reach out and we'll allow you to sell our stuff. And so I said one day, let's just, so after I designed my knife, I had to open a store because I couldn't just, I couldn't just sell it on eBay
Yeah.
or Amazon. I said, let's just open my own store.
Is that because of the law, or
just because I just,
like, are there knife laws or anything like that?
I don't think so. Well, it's a good question. I don't think so, but I just wanted my own store. I didn't want to be on an eBay store. I didn't want to have an
Gotcha.
Amazon store. I just had no interest in that.
Yeah, I was relating that to guns. Like,
Yeah.
if you were into firearms, there's laws with
I see.
with online
Yeah,
sale.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just sell a gun on eBay.
Mhm.
But I guess it's different. It's different with knives.
Yeah, I'm thinking a little different. But
Cool.
but yeah, so basically I said, what, I have a knife that I've just designed. I'm gonna get like 100 knives of the first model that I designed, and so I said, let's just open up a store. So I opened up a storefront, e-storefront, and we sold out of the knives within the first like 2 days.
Amazing.
And
The
then
power of social media, dude, it is unbelievable. Being a quote influencer, the amount of
yeah,
influence that you can have.
I've yet called myself that. I've never referred to myself as an influencer.
Well, yeah, I don't like the term.
Yeah.
It sounds cringy, but it's true. You literally you influence people to buy your product.
Yeah.
But it's not because it's a bad product. It's because they trust your judgment. They trust your review on it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it genuinely was a good product.
Yeah, it was like, my first knife was released about 3 years after after I did my first video on Perfection, and so
Amazing.
yeah, so
So
it
all
sold
these-
out, which was
Yeah, sold out.
amazing. And then so the next batch would take another 6 months to make. So it was like,
Wow.
because these are handmade in Japan, right? They took forever to make.
Oh my
And so
goodness.
while that was being made, I was designing the second knife, which is what we just talked about. And yeah, so when the store launched, I get a lot of solicitations from people who reached out to me before. Say, hey, we saw you have a new store. Would you want to carry our product? And then
Interesting.
I did another trip to Japan, and basically for 2 weeks I went to visit like a dozen knife makers and whetstone sharpening manufacturers, and they said, hey, could we list on your store? Can you carry our product? And so yeah, so the store,
it started with you being a YouTuber, just simply selling your knife, and then it became this. It's literally like a storefront
It's
now
a-
for all the
for,
Japanese knives.
yeah, I think we have like nearly 4 dozen brands now on our store, and
Wow.
it's been a really incredible journey to kind of go from selling one knife, my knife, to working with the knife makers that I've been reviewing for like the last 4 or 5 years. And so it's
And
been
I'm sure knife connoisseurs, like, they're now looking to your website as kind of a trusted US source to buy these products.
yeah, if you look at the description, if you click on any knife or any item in my store, I believe we have the most honest and open description about what that product is. If you go to a lot of different knife shops, and you click on a knife, they might just say made by so and so. Here it is. We talk about every single aspect of the knife, things like the handles, what the handle's made of, why you want this handle, how to care for the knife. We talk about the steels, the composition of the blade, the history of the knife maker. So we go really deep into the description of every single knife.
And the photos are crisp and clean and
Yeah,
gorgeous.
we're trying to do the absolute best job and give people the absolute like best experience of shopping for a knife. We have a no questions return policy. If you don't like your knife, call us or email us. We'll get you a return label. You can live in Egypt. We'll pay for the return to come back to us. So we make it as easy as possible for you to not only to buy your knife, but also to research the knife. We give you every single information that we have accessible. And a lot of makers, a lot of people reach out to us and they say, hey, I have a knife by so-and-so, but I can't tell you who made it. I can't tell you where it's made. We turn down those sources because we believe that we need to at least present to people a very honest, the most honest representation of that product that we sell.
You keep saying we. Do
Oh,
you
I have
have
a partner.
people?
Yes, yeah. So I have a partner for the e-store. So my
Cool.
yeah. So when I first launched my knife, the first it was just me. It was me in the e-store. But then I just got bogged down. Like it went from
Yeah.
me being able to produce one or two videos a month to making no videos and having to pack knives and having to work out things like logistics, order boxes, order packing materials,
And the
and it
whole
was
shipping thing is full time just by
yeah, it was
itself.
a lot, right? So then one of my subscribers who he works a lot in e-commerce. He reached out. He says, "Hey, I see you have a store. Would you like me to help out? We can
Awesome.
we can discuss a partnership. I'll handle the e-store. You handle production of the creation aspect of your channel." And I think that's a great
That's a
offer.
great deal.
Uh,
You have the bad end of the deal, sir,
yeah.
but I will take it.
Yeah, so it's worked out.
Very
It's been
cool.
a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. It's really allowed me to not only focus on my channel, but I can focus a lot on my family. So
Do you see how God has been working in your life when I hear your story about, moving out of Boston, the opportunities in LA, um, relying on others, being homeless, and then your friends helping you, and then that leading to work, and then you're just doing your thing, and then somebody just comes up to you and offers. I mean, it's just amazing when you look back.
yeah, I mean, I think to people who aren't believers or aren't Christians, they will say it was your hard work, it was your good luck that got you to where you are. I believe there is a lot of hard work. I for
100%.
sure I put in a lot of work, like in my life, not just everything I do. I'm all in. But there's a lot of things that I can't account for from my hard work. It's not simply luck. It was like there's a path kind of paved for me.
Exactly.
So yeah, from a Christian standpoint, God's He's had my back since day one, since my parents' divorce, even before that.
Hmm.
But as an adult now, yeah, I still work really hard. I still put everything I have into what I'm doing, trusting that no matter how bad things are, or how good things are, God's always going to be there. Uh, and so
Heck yeah.
it's helped me a lot with my life. It's helped me take off that I don't put the pressure on myself to perform, to provide. Though I do provide, it's just I know that ultimately, it's not up to me whether I succeed or fail. It's where I'm led.
I mean, tell me about your faith story. How did that happen for you? Like, how did you get saved?
So when I was in high school, there was I had I was working at the daycare, so I was at the in downtown Chinatown area, and I had a counselor who kind of oversaw me, and she said, "Hey, my church, we do a Friday night sports night every Friday, on Fridays. So come, you love athletics, come work sometime, or come work out with us, come play with us." And so on Friday nights after my lifeguard
Your
shift,
work
my
or
shift,
your
yeah, my
your
lifeguard
shift?
shift at like 6:30. I would get off of work at 6, and then I think on Friday night fellowship for high schoolers started at 6:30 or so. So I went
Perfect.
over across the street to the church, and I just, you know, I would show up. I would play sports with them. I would hang out with them.
It was
That
your family. you know?
That was, yeah. I mean, they were different than any people I've met growing up, because I didn't grow up around Christians at all. I grew up around poverty. I grew up around a
Yeah.
lot of drug dealers. I grew up in the projects. People don't realize this, but like I spent my
Huh.
entire. So when my first memory of Boston was living in South Boston, and so we lived in a basically a townhome that was I'm pretty sure it was government subsidized, but then within like 3 or 4 years of living there, they put us in the projects of Boston, and
Wow.
so
Yeah.
I spent from like 7 years old all the way to 18, or yeah, 18. I lived in projects of Boston, like, and the projects that I lived in was like there were 10 buildings, or either 10 or 12 buildings. So between 200 to 240 families, all earning under like $25,000 a year, $25,000 a year.
Sure.
And so that was what I grew up around. Like, that's all I knew. I
Wow.
had no concept besides movies and what you see on TV. I had no concept of what like wealth was like, or what life outside
Yeah.
of what I grew up was like. And so when I went to this church, people were like, they were happy, they were optimistic, and some of them were arrogant, some of them were really humble. So yeah, it's just a whole mix of people. But
Yeah.
I thought, these people are kind of cool.
Humans.
They're different than yeah, they're different than what I'm used to. So I would show up every Friday night, and that went on for about a year or so. And one day one of the guys invited me to like a Bible study, and so I showed up one day on a Sunday to a church and then to a Bible study, and I enjoyed it. Um, and then that went on for a couple of years, kind of leading into my like junior senior year of high school. And so I still had no idea like there was a God. Like I would hear these messages when we go to these events, and I still didn't really understand what that actually like what that meant. And then one day I get a phone call from a friend of mine, and she said, "Hey, her cousin, who was actually my good friend, she said, hey, her name is May. I'm pretty sure I can talk about her, but her name is May. She was in an accident today. She's in the hospital right now, and we don't know if she's gonna make it. So she told me that she
Oh.
heard that she fell off her bike, and she hit the corner of the sidewalk, like on her head, like her head went into the sidewalk,
Oh my gosh.
and so she had brain swelling, and she was not doing very well. So this is like the first time I'm like 16 years old at this point, 16, 17. I'm like, okay, this is the first time where I've heard of a problem that I can't solve. Like I can't show up, I can't help in any way. And
Yeah.
so I sent out an email at that time using Juno. Juno was a big thing back then,
Oh yeah.
or AOL. And so I sent out a message to like everyone I knew, and everyone says, "Oh, we're gonna pray. We'll pray for her. We'll have good thoughts for her." But I remember this one email from this gal. Her name is Elaine. She's a good friend today, and she says, "I don't know what God's plan is for your friend or for you, but I would implore you to pray to God to heal her." So that
Wow.
was like the first time someone said to me, "Pray to God for something." And so I got on my knees, I prayed,
Hmm.
and nothing really happened. Like I didn't feel God. I didn't,
Yeah.
it was just I prayed, and I said, okay, I don't know what to do now. Do I wait? Do I call back to the hospital and check? What do I do? So a few days go by, and I finally get a phone call again from the same friend who told me about the accident,
Hmm.
and she's kind of like screaming on the phone, kind of ecstatic, like, "Hey, May's awake, May's awake." I said, "What do you mean she's awake?" She goes, "May's awake."
Wow.
I said, "Okay, well, tell me what happened." She's like, "Well, um, she said that the doctors decided like a day ago that they needed to operate to remove a part of her brain. If they don't remove that part of the brain, she would die because there was so much swelling in her brain. But
Hmm.
if they do move forward with the operation, there was a highly likelihood that she would end up a vegetable. So So her parents decided that it was, that they would take the chance and have the operation. And so in the phone call, she said, so she says it's as if May woke up from a dream because she doesn't remember anything. She's kind of like, I mean, she's hungry. She's talking. She knows who's there and who's in the room. So for her, it was as if she woke up from this dream. And then then I started bawling, right? I'm like, oh, shoot, because it wasn't so much that she woke up that got me emotional or got me believing in God. Was in my prayer, I said, I want her to wake up as if she woke up from a dream. Like
Oh my gosh.
I want her to become okay, like as if she woke up from a dream.
Yeah.
So those were the words I heard. So for me, God spoke to me in a way where it was like, I'm going to give you your exact words that you're looking for. And so then at that point, I said, okay,
100%.
so at that point I said, God, you're real. I'm going to pursue you. I don't know how to pursue you, but I know you're real. So we're good. So I didn't become a Christian overnight from that. It was years. I went through years of like digging and understanding what it meant to be a believer. And then a year later I moved to LA. So that's kind of like where my other life started in LA. But, fast forward 10 years or so, about 10 years later, I actually was able to get a hold of May, who was actually the one who was in the accident. And I went back to Boston for a visit for, over Christmas, and I got to, we went to dinner together, and I asked her, I'm like, do you remember what happened with your accident? And she's like, yeah, and so she kind of gave me a whole different perspective of what actually happened. She actually lost her ability to walk for a while. She had to relearn how to walk. She had to relearn how to eat. She had to learn a lot of things, which I didn't hear about because we weren't in contact anymore, and I had moved away. But God answered my prayer in a very specific manner that let me know He was there, that He was listening. But then there was this whole other struggle that happened afterwards that I didn't know about, and it wouldn't have changed my perspective of what happened. It wouldn't have changed my faith at all. It just was to hear what she said, and what she went through after that, was amazing for me. Yeah. But yeah, that was my.
Did you share your story with her?
I did, and she was like, "Wow," and she was like, "Wow, I had no idea." It was a very intimate moment with her because she was. I mean, we're still good friends. But it was a very special moment that we shared. Like, hey, it was through your life-threatening experience kind of saved my life in quite literally, your life saved my life in a sense.
Wow.
And
that's powerful. Yeah, crazy, man.
Yeah.
Okay, before you actually hang up,
Uh-huh.
can we do a posed thumbnail for the video?
Sure. What is the thumbnail?
Your face.
What's the thumbnail you need me to pose for?
Well, are you still recording on your other camera up there?
Yeah, I'm recording on my camera.
Do you happen to have a knife on you somewhere?
Yeah.
I would love if you just held it,
Oh, sure.
If you just held the knife in the frame. There you go.
Okay, so.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, perfect. There it is. That's the one.